We're back on the Mitchell Port Unleashed podcast. I encourage everyone, every listener, like, share, subscribe to the podcast. We are here with a guest that we've just been in the back end, just having a conversation, chopping it up. Christopher August, welcome to the show, my friend.
What's up, my man? It's good to connect with you. Thanks for having me.
I know. How's Mexico treating you, my friend?
It's great. I love living down here. It's been about 3.5 years now, and just came down here with my 5-year-old son, his mom, and now our family has grown. She met someone, they have a new baby, so we're just enjoying the life down here. And you know what? I'm super happy, grateful to be in this culture, this beautiful weather, and I travel a lot to the States still and travel around the world, but it's nice to have a nice grounding spot down here.
I love that. You know what I like about you, just from watching a lot of your content and just seeing you on Instagram and all this stuff, that sense of warmth that you have. You know what I mean? So I
Thank
know
you,
this is
brother.
about to be an excellent episode here on the Mitchell Report Unleashed podcast. I like to just jump into the conversation, all that great stuff.
Let's do
What
it.
drew you to breathwork practice, and how has it transformed your life, my friend?
Well, I believe there's many answers to that question. In the short version, I had some, catalytic moments that have really brought me to the edge of my life and to this aspect where I was pretty much just pre 2012 suffering in my own internal landscapes, going through a lot of anxiety, feeling very empty, feeling just distraught, unfulfilled in so many ways, in the rat race, so to say. And that time of my life was great on paper, where I had a master's degree, I was climbing the corporate ladder, the vice president was calling upon me to do these new roles. And again, for my ego and for a 25-year-old at the time, it felt great, but there was something within me that just needed something new. I needed to fulfill these values of really helping people, of traveling the world, of diving deeper into spirituality and myself. And so that's when I left it all behind after a series of synchronistic events and moved halfway around the world to Tanzania, Africa, where I lived in the villages there for 2 years. And while I was living there, I had a near death experience on the Zambezi River. I was there for a music festival, and I had decided to go whitewater rafting because I was a little bit of an adrenaline junkie at the time. And I fell out of the raft and basically on a class 5 rapid and was drowning, and I was losing consciousness. And from that point, again, I'm giving you the brief version here. I can go much more detailed, but again, I was ripped out of the water after, who knows, it felt like forever. It was probably about a minute and a half, 2 minutes. I had swallowed all this water, and at that point I was like, a lot of NDE experiences, they talk about seeing the light, and this was a very profound experience. And I was ripped out of the water by a kayaker, and he started pumping my chest, and all this water started coming out, and I started to breathe. And in that moment I looked up at the blue sky, saw the cliffs, and I was just started crying for how much gratitude I felt for this life and what this life means and how it's directly connected to our breath. And before that, just touching, scratching the surface on, breath through the power of yoga and meditation. And I knew in that moment that a big part of my mission was to spread and to share the spirit of breath.
Wow. There's so much there because when you spoke about being in the water, right? A lot of folks don't know this, and I've just actually been coming out more organically. I almost, drowned as I was a kid. You know what I mean? I don't remember it, but that's the reason why I don't enter water. It's just that thing. And when you're in Toronto and you're on Lakeshore and you're on these different things, and I see it, I won't lie to you. There's this overcoming anxiety that I get. It's like a panic. You know what I mean? If you ever in this city, you'll see like I'll walk on bridges and I walk more close into the road. I don't walk close to the railing anymore. And a lot of people are like, you got to overcome that fear. And I will. I'm planning on it. Toronto Island, you know, when the weather gets better over here, we're still kind of in a little bit of winter. I'm actually going to be getting in one of the boat cruises just around the island, just to overcome that fear,
Beautiful.
because I think that's a first step. Now, I'm not saying I'm trying to jump in any water anytime soon to start swimming. You know what I mean? But what you speak to, it resonates with me so much because it's like the fight or flight instantly kicked in because I'm
Yep.
like, oh my goodness, like, you know what I mean? How that experience can shape how it feels in life for us to go into the motion and the progression of life of what we're wanting to do. So for yourself, right? When you go back to that moment, you talk about that vulnerability, the tears, the crying. When was that aha moment that flipped into your mindset of like, hey, listen, I want to like impact change and help develop people?
Well, pre that experience, pre near death, I was already asking the questions, who am I? Why am I here? How can I best, help others, right? And that was sort of my moment of going to Africa and serving in the Peace Corps and volunteering my time and my energy for 2 years of my life living in this community. So that was already there, but after that near death experience is like before and after, right? After was a it was just a knowingness. Like I know why I'm here. And from that knowingness, I began to follow my excitement, which is what I call and what I deem to be the formula. And this is, I'm not the only one that says this, but to follow your excitement, to follow your bliss, to follow your joy, it may seem cliche, but that's where your true spirit and passion live. And when you follow that to your greatest ability, your life begins to open up and it begins to expand in this way that is really ineffable and is really just in what I feel. And a question that I ask over and over and over again is how can I be of the greatest service to the whole? Because we are all meant to be of service and we all have our own unique gifts to share with the world. And when we're of service to the whole, we're of service to ourselves. And because it's all connected, it's all one. And so this is what I live by. And since that moment, I knew that like I'm here to make ripples of impact in my own unique way, in my own authentic soul expression.
I love that you say that. That's well put there. Let's speak to, because I like to play both sides of the audience. Like as me as the
Yeah, yeah,
host,
yeah.
bringing you on as the guest, I like to kind of tap into what the audience could be thinking right now. And one of the questions is, how do you approach individuals that are skeptical about the benefits of breath work?
Mm. Well, we haven't even touched on the benefits, and we can get into that in a bit. But yeah, I mean, anybody that's skeptical about anything, I'm always open to the skeptics, and it's good to have some level of skepticism. But what I would say to someone that has any skepticism surrounding breath, I'd ask them, what is breath to you? Most people say, well, it's a mechanism in some sort to keep me alive, right? It's an automatic function of the body. Without breath, there is no life. Breath equals life. But it goes much more beyond that. And I say, give me 3 minutes of your time, and I'm going to show you right now how breath can impact your life in a positive way and how consciously, intentionally, with awareness, connecting to your breath, what that does for you physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Physically, well, of course, we can talk about sleep. We can talk about our cortisol levels. We can talk about digestion. We can talk about immune health. We can go down these rabbit holes. Mentally, slowing down the thoughts, bringing us more into a present moment where we're not in that state of overwhelm and the racing mind is happening over and over and over again. Emotionally, feeling more calm, clear, and focused. Spiritually, feeling deeply connected to your soul, to God, to source, to creator, whatever you want to call it. Opening your intuition and deeply anchoring into your higher purpose. So there's many realms in which we can surf when we talk about breath, but breath is everything. It is life.
It is. Think about it. Everything needs some sort of oxygen, needs some
That's
sort of
it.
air. You know what I mean? Plants, wherever you're in the world, spring is going to be coming any moment. You know what I mean? So when you start seeing over here the dandelions or whatever is growing out of the ground, and you start seeing the birds being out and the squirrels being out, they all have to breathe. So if
Yep.
you're not breathing, that means you're not living. If you're not living, what's going on? You know what I mean? So I love the way that you tie all that together. Let's talk about the benefits of breath work, because I think some folks get into that woo woo. Oh, breath work is just yoga. Breath
Yeah.
work is just the cold plunge. For you, what is it? What does it mean for you?
Yeah, I'd say breath work in its simplest essence is an active form of meditation. So, we think about meditation, you think about sitting in stillness and just trying to quiet your mind and all of that. And for some people that works, it's a very deep, committed practice over many years. But the breath is sort of a shortcut in a way. It's an instrument, it's a catalyst, it's a tool for grounding and also for expansion, depending upon how you use it. There's two different I guess realms of breathing if you just want to break it down. There's parasympathetic breathing, there's sympathetic breathing. Similar to our nervous system. Parasympathetic is the slow, calm, connected feeling that you get when you are relaxed and in your body, when you're void of stress and anxiety and overwhelm, which is not a normal state for most people. Most people are on the sympathetic side, which is fight or flight, survival mode, just continuing to rub up against life and just being in this really deeply stressed out state all the time. That's how most of the world lives. Similar to our breathing, right? Then we go to parasympathetic breathing to activate the parasympathetic response to calm down, to come into a deeply relaxed, serene state. You're going to want to slow down the breath, right? So that would be slower breath rhythms. And we would breathe in, breathe out. Generally, an extended exhale over even just a few minutes will really calm you down, slow down the brain waves. And when we're in that state, that's going to be more presence, more awareness. Well, why does that matter? Well, you can begin to get out of tunnel vision in your life and you can begin to see the bigger picture that's taking place here because there's a web that's being woven everywhere. But when we're stressed, where our mind is hyperactive, we can't see really anything that's happening in our lives. We're just going by this like very reptilian instinct. We're in the left logical mind all the time. So the parasympathetic breath slows it down, allows you to come into greater harmony, balance, coherence with your mind and with your heart, connecting the two together to live with more ease, more grace, more openness, more receptivity. Go to parasympathetic side, there is benefits to that, and we can look at that from the lens of like holotropic breath work, which is this in and out breathing, very fast movement in and out of the mouth. And that type of breathing, that's going to be beneficial for those that really want to go deep and uproot, release trauma, wounding. We all have some level of trauma, some level of fear response. That's a great way to uproot that. Now, that's going to be a little bit more advanced. It will also create psychoactive psychedelic states where DMT is released and you can begin to have what you might find on different plant medicines, similar type of experiences. So again, there's benefits to both. It just depends on what you need in that moment.
You just gave us a whole masterclass, man. I'm just sitting here nodding my head. I'm like, okay, okay. That little part there, I'm like, pen and paper, yo. Yeah, it's needed, is necessary, because it's, even for me learning the different parts that you went into, it's like this is information that's going to change my situation. And then it's encouraging the audience. This is the reason why we do the podcast, of going, taking a deeper dive and really understanding, you know what I mean? And things like that. From your research and development and things like that, was there like a book that you picked up? Was it a course that you took, like, to really start understanding the operations levels of breathwork?
There's many books. I'm actually probably got a couple on my bookshelf here. Yeah, there's a great book called Just Breathe. That was an inspiration. Dan Brulet's, he's been in the breathwork space for many years. I since wrote my own book on it, but also after 10 years of going through certifications and all of that and going through different modalities of breath. So, again, we look at these different types of breath work. There's holotropic, which I just explained, which is, based from Stanislav Grof in the 1970s. And that's because he was in the whole LSD movement and psychedelic movement, and LSD ended up getting banned. And so they found and wanted to find different ways to access these heightened states of consciousness. So holotropic was born. Then you have rebirthing breath work. That's a breath work certification I've gone through myself. And that is all about connecting yourself back to your wombs, back to the womb space and back to the time in which you were right before you were born, to repattern the trauma of being born, which is the first trauma we all experience. I've gone through Soma breath work and all different modalities. And long story short is that, through this experience, I've developed my own sort of lens. Now, breath is breath. You can breathe in different ways. You can have these different ways of connecting with your breath. But for me, it's just like, how can I synthesize all of this into not only the spoken word of what I'm sharing with you here, but a direct experience and bringing people on these journeys within themselves and the profound experiences for the thousands of people I've facilitated for over the years. It's just what keeps me coming back for more. It's what anchors me into my why of why I do this and why I facilitate this work.
Love that you say that because it speaks to parts of self mastery. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that journey that you have to go through, for yourself, right? Someone that's starting today, right now, they want to transform. It could be out of a breakup, loss of a job, changing of a job, entrepreneurship, moving to a different country. What would you say is their first initial step when it comes down to connecting with true self mastery?
Yeah, it's a great question. True self mastery and like mastering yourself, you master your reality. And yeah, I talk about this a lot, and it all really does begin with your breath. Now, there's many tools that we can add on top of that, many tools in which I facilitate, but it all comes down to your breathing, because I can look at a person right away and I can tell what pattern they're locked into. Most people that are in a pattern, where they're overwhelmed, they're anxious, they're stressed, they're going to be breathing very shallow from their chest, or they're going to be in this lock pattern where they're holding their breath. And a lot of people don't even notice this until they bring awareness to it. Now, when we step onto the path of mastery, the path of awakening, this is at times can be a very turbulent path, right? We go through many challenges, many dark nights of the soul that are here to really test us and to bring us and help us elevate into a new version of ourselves. And again, why I wrote a whole book on this is because the foundational force that governs life and everything is our breath. So when you begin to deepen, right? When I say deepen, like really breathe into the belly, you are sending life force energy into yourself. Life force energy, prana, chi, whatever you want to call it, this is the governing force of life. And when we have blockages within us, right? And that's our first, step, is to begin to clear out the blockages, the barriers, the limitations, the fears, the doubts, all of the things that have kept us stuck and down in this conditioned program state, and allow us to rise above that. Well, how do you do that? When you breathe deep, what are you doing? You're changing your state, not only physiologically, not only psychologically, but vibrationally. Vibration is what runs and creates all of what we see in the universe. Everything is energy. And so when we know that, we become the creators and not the victims of our lives. We step within ourselves and we clear out the ideas, the conditions, the imprints that tell us that the world is happening to us. Really, the truth is the world is happening through us. Life is happening through us, and it's happening for us. And anything we see externally is just a reflection of what's happening internally. So master the inner game, and the outer game naturally will reveal itself and reflect the higher vibrational states of peace, love, abundance, prosperity, purpose, and so forth. So it all starts within.
Man, oh man. You know, it's a refresher for me here. And I'm probably gonna link this in the show notes or wherever on YouTube when this comes out. I remember around this time last year, I had a conversation with a young lady. And the same thing about the breath work and the inner and the life force energy, it was correlated to semen retention. And the wild thing about that episode, everything you spoke to matches exactly what she said. You know what I mean? And a lot of folks look at it and they're like, oh, well, you're talking about life force energy. And if it's semen retention or it's breath work or it's self mastery, it's all inside of us. That's the reason why you can't have leaky energy. Like, you
That's
know what
it.
I mean? You can't. And like my spirit and the way my alignment is spiritually, I know when there's like turbulence around me. It's weird. You know what I mean? And some people are like, oh, how do you know? Just pay attention, folks. Pay attention. You can see if someone is operating from a chaotic standpoint and you tend to want to your spirit and your boundaries and your non-negotiables technically block a lot of that, especially when you're operating on a high frequency. And that's why I always reference to Dame Dash. Dame Dash says it all the time. You know, it was the CEO owner of Rockefeller. He said, you know, Rockefeller Records with Jay-Z. He said, I don't have time for like stupid non-conversations that are not developing. And some people look at that and say that's harsh, but it's like, are we ebbs and flowing and are we growing? Think about if me and
Mm.
you were doing this podcast and it's just like, yeah, all right, I'm not dialed in. Chris is here. He's just distracted. He's on his phone. Rory's here. He's playing PS5. Like, what kind of podcast are we going to have? We're locked and ready. We're ready to go. You know what I mean?
For
So
sure.
that's what comes up for me for sure.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. And you brought up a lot of good points there, and there's so many rabbit holes we can go down, but overall, just to really drive the point home that when we can step again beyond the boxes, the labels that we have crammed ourselves into, and we can begin to expand beyond that, we essentially can be at that 30,000-foot view, sitting on the mountaintop, not within the valley, right? In the valley, it's you can't see 2 feet in front of you. There's fog, there's haze, there's so much going on, and sometimes that's what we need. But when you become the creator, you can see the whole picture and see your life happening all at once, and you can begin to when you master your energy and your vibration, you begin to rise to these new levels. And just like you were using the example of semen retention for men, the breath is a huge part of that because you are raising the energy up through the higher centers. You're circulating the energy from the root, which is that survival animalistic side, to the higher centers of the heart, which is for most men not a place we're used to living in, right? There's not that much consciousness that is really aimed at that heart center, but there is a lot of power in that center itself. And so the breath is the way to move that energy, just as we move in, again, a whole masterclass on cerebral spinal fluid and how that connects to your third eye to open your vision. There's so much here, but I'll pause there.
Listen, man, yeah, I got goosebumps when you start talking like that because I'm like, yeah, that's the energy that I'm on, right? Because
Yeah, man.
I think some folks, I don't know what it is, and I'm not here to challenge or here to make fun of, but it's like really open up your eyes and your heart to this different perspectives. You can't have this fixed mindset. Dibble and dabble of what makes sense for you. If you're curious, curiosity killed the cat. Satisfaction brought him back. You get what I mean? It's an old school saying.
Yep.
So if you see something, if it's with breath work or semen retention, understand it. Pay attention, listen, and understand it or read it. There's endless resources. Christopher August has got endless resources. Rory has got endless resources. There's a whole database. There's a whole Netflix archive special. You know what I mean? For everybody. And now Christopher's here. He's a part of this. You see what I'm saying? So I appreciate you and everything you just said there, my friend. Let's get into success stories,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Success stories where a client that you worked with overcame trauma and the guidance that you gave them and how did that translate and develop for themselves?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've worked with a lot of people over the years, both in one-on-one and group settings. And, my background's not just in breath, it's in transformational coaching, somatic inquiry, and many other different types of modalities, energy medicine, and so forth. And so I think before we answer that question, it's important to understand what trauma is. Right. And that's what there's a lot of misunderstood, that word's thrown around a lot, and people are like, okay, well, I've heard this so many times. What does it actually mean? Right. So we all experience some level of trauma. Being a part of this human experience, again, like I was saying before, just being born is a trauma that happens. Now, we associate trauma with negativity, right? And challenge and all of that. And yes, that is a part of it in the sense of challenge and struggle that we face and endure. And whether that is what we perceive to be a micro trauma, something acute, or something that's been severe, a near death experience, some form of abuse, right? These are bigger sort of traumas or imprints that happen, right? Versus your mom or your dad telling you something at a time where I guess were frustrated, and you heard them say something in this one way that created an imprint or created a trauma or a wound within you, right? So there's different ways of looking at this, but overall, we have these patterns locked within us. Now, what happens when we experience any form of trauma? On the severe end, we go into a state in which our nervous system kicks in, and we go into fight, flight, or freeze. These are the responses that generally tend to happen. And when we are in that, what happens? We are not able to process rationally. We're not able to actually step out of, we're just in that full survival reptilian state. So, what happens generally when trauma happens? The emotion of that, whether that's fear, generally it's fear, or we're terrified, we're scared, that gets embedded within our cellular memory. Okay. And so that then goes into the body and gets lodged in these different places. Energetically, they show up as these imprints or blockages. And then from there, what happens? Your breath pattern begins to change. You begin to shallow breathe. If you look at a baby, a natural baby, through its first few years, it's breathing deep into the belly. Over time, as it experiences more life, has incurred more trauma, then it begins to breathe more shallow. And so I say all of this is because generally when I work with people, and I can share any number of stories of people having gone through some really dark depths, the process I always guide people through, and I'm going to share it here for the people listening, and I'm going to simplify it because it's much deeper than that, is you want to first identify what you're feeling. What are you experiencing? Because oftentimes we try to heal through the mind, but really we need to heal through the body, because the
Mm.
body is the wise mechanism. It's the intelligent vessel that carries the memories, that carries everything that we have ever experienced. And when we go into the body, we use the breath. We direct the breath into the body. We go in and we ask, okay, what am I feeling? Where am I feeling it? Let's say I experienced some level of wounding and trauma, and I'm carrying this pattern where I keep getting locked into tension or restriction, constriction in my belly, in my solar plexus. This is where it shows up for a lot of people. And this is a lot of work I've done on myself. I go into the solar plexus, I observe it. What's happening there? I ask people, what are the sensations you're feeling? What's the temperature? What's the texture? What's happening there? It's dark. There's a ball of what I feel like it's like obsidian black energy. It's very tight and it's constricting. It's actually a little painful. It kind of feels like it's stabbing. Great. Now we've identified something. Let's go into that. Most people's instinct is to run. Let's get away from this, because going into pain, that doesn't make sense. But going into it, we begin to understand its language, because underneath the sensations that are there is an emotion. Let's just call it fear for now. Whatever the fear is, let's call it fear of rejection. This is a common fear, which is also chalked up as a core wound. Rejection. I have a fear of rejection. Okay, now I'm really feeling the energy here. So now I take people deeper into that, and we begin to breathe into that. We get to give it life. And from that, we begin to soften that imprint. And we invite in through colors, through vibration, the energy of forgiveness, the energy of compassion, the energy of safety, anchoring that in through the breath. And this is the transmutation alchemical process that begins to happen. And, sometimes it's one session, there's massive release. Sometimes it's a few sessions, sometimes it's a little bit. But through that softening, we begin to open. And through that open, we become available to life.
Mm, the art of storytelling, my friend. Where'd you learn that from?
I've never taken a class, my friend. I'm just here being me.
No, no, and you know what it is? It speaks to when you know your stuff and you know how to make it palatable. You know what I mean? And I think the encompassing part of this podcast now is that the ability where a lot of guests, men, women, come on here, and the art of the potent storytelling, which basically puts you in that, what do they say, ASMR? And it's like natural
ASMR,
breathe.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And some people are like, yo, every time I listen to your shows, it's kind of like relaxing, it's therapeutic, it's all this. I'm like, well, that means I'm doing my job. Hopefully you're listening. Hopefully that you got your pen and your paper out and you're just taking the notes or you're rewinding and things like that, because I think it's one of the most underrated things, especially when you put mics in our face, right? I think not everyone is built for maybe doing a podcast or doing speaking and things like that into a camera. But when you season the ability continuously, it just comes natural. You know what I mean? That's why I say to folks, find that one thing. How can you help someone in your community? Because
Mm,
it could be anything.
mm.
Heck, it could be anything. You know what I mean? And all that good
Yes.
stuff.
Yes, man. And you got a great, just to reflect back to you, you got a great podcasting voice. You're made for it.
Thank you, my man. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Let's get into this, because I think this speaks to a lot of the listeners and things like that, is manifesting the life that it is you want and you desire.
Yeah.
Because we hear it a lot. Oh, I manifested that. I manifested that. And I've had some folks give, two different answers. Not necessarily on a podcast, but what comes up to you when you hear manifesting the life that you desire?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's a lot to be said on this topic. There's a lot of, yeah, I guess just things that are shared and said within this space, the conscious space, the spiritual space, whatever you want to call it, the personal growth space, that people have these different definitions of manifestation. Like I broke down trauma, I'm going to break down manifestation if you don't mind, just to kind of
Let's go,
simplify.
man. Listen, this is you, bro. I'm
Well, I'm going
chilling
to
right now.
I'm going to simplify this for everybody listening, because I want to make sure that, we take, these realms, which can be quite heady, and ground them into the body and really feel them. Right. So first of all, we're manifesting all the time. Okay. You living as a human being on this planet are manifesting every single second of every single day. Okay. And you are either doing that unconsciously or you're doing that consciously. Ideally, we begin to shift into the realm of conscious manifestation. So, if I were to define conscious manifestation, I would say something along the lines of, it's an intentional act of bringing together your visions, your dreams, your intentions, and aligning that to your innermost thoughts, your beliefs, your emotions, your words, your breath. And by taking ownership of your reality, by saying, I am the creator of my reality, by taking responsibility for everything that's happened in your reality, you become a vessel in which you are co-creating with the intelligence of life in the universe. And it's by attuning your inner world, the frequency, the vibration within yourself, to those desires, because whatever you are wanting externally, whether that's abundance, whether that's prosperity, whether that's purpose, whether that's love, whether that's connection, happiness, joy, you name it, we're used to chasing it externally. That's what we're programmed to do. I'm going to go out and find that person. I'm going to go out and find this money. I'm going to go fill my bank account with this. But we know time after time, hearing story after story, even the wealthiest people in the world that have all the material riches, oftentimes they're the least happy people. It's because they haven't found it within themselves. We're tying our worth, our value, our security, our safety to something outside of ourselves, and that is an illusion, and it will lead you astray every single time. But when you lead and you go deep within yourself to align yourself to the vibrational essence of what you seek externally, that's how you begin to manifest it externally, because you realize that you don't need anything, you don't need anyone to fulfill you. You have everything you need right now in this moment. Seek the kingdom within, go within, and all around that should be fulfilled around you. And so when we go into manifestation, we start in the inner world. We start to peel apart the thoughts, the beliefs that we have, the our very own breath, how we're breathing, right? Even in my book, I have a whole chapter on manifestation. Then we begin to look at our values, we look at our passions, we look at our vision, we look at how we can deeply anchor ourselves even more into a state of allowance, into a state of trust, into a state of receivership. And this is all, of course, a process that we go through over time. But the first place to start, aside from your breath, is to just take account to how your life is happening. Most times, if we go through something challenging, we want to blame the person or the thing outside of ourselves. How can we take responsibility in this moment for the life that we're living and the life we're experiencing, and saying, I I own this. I'm responsible for this. And from there, you begin to empower yourself into a new narrative where you are the creator anchored into your divine power.
Mm, mm. I just feel like mic dropping right there. This mic drop that. Just put the mic down and y'all do what you guys got to do. You know what I mean? Because I feel like so many folks, I'm speaking to the ones that I see on Instagram that are like talking about manifestation. And it's like this, why manifest that? It was always your thought, right? If you say you're going to do something, most likely it's going to happen. If you consistently show up, right? Take that 1 hour a day, depending on what your schedule is like. You know, I know a lot of folks want to get into that content creation aspect. We're here on a podcast, but we're also content creators because we have a message that we're wanting to spread to the masses. Over time, it will come. And I think there's some folks that want to get into this space. I'm kind of going to go off the rails a little bit here. They want to be a content creator. They say it, which is mean you're starting to manifest it, but they don't want to simply sit here and put the work in, right? Christopher and I both have to put the work in. We have to show up, right? It's not just about having a fancy camera, having the lighting, having the mics, having the backdrops. That all comes with time. But we have to simply put our best foot forward to say, is how are we going to build into this ecosystem, which leads to community, which then leads to what? Showing up, getting guest appearances for like Christopher August here, seeking other guests that we may want to get in a podcast, maybe a potential collaboration, a potential meetup could turn into where Christopher gets booked somewhere in, let's just say Chicago for a world-renowned retreat that's going to have a bunch of speakers. You ebbs and you flows with it, ladies and gentlemen. I think that's where I really want to anchor into from my point of view, not to stomp on what you said, because what you said is brilliant, right? But it's like the folks, seek inward with what it is you're going to do. Don't make excuses. Make those critical adjustments, and your life will shape in front of you. It takes time. It takes reps. Heck,
That's it, man.
you know?
Yes.
Christopher knows
100%.
this. I'm pretty sure if I say to you, how many times did you have to work for free to start showing the receipts to getting the success of what that is?
Many. I've devoted a lot of my life to service, of just giving from that place. And yeah, man, you're speaking to inspired action, and that's the excitement I was talking about before. Following that excitement, taking the action, persevering through the challenges, because you want to level up, you want to go to that next level in your life. Well, you better be ready to be knocked on your ass. You better be ready to face your shadows. You better be ready to face the pain. And because you are always expanding, you have to naturally have the boomerang effect of contracting and going deep into those spots where you've been avoiding your whole life. And you go through there, that's when you can rise higher. The path is not just ascension, it's descension to ascend. You go within to come without and go higher to new levels. And this is the process. We're always leveling up in life. And that's
Absolutely.
beautifully said, brother.
No, and what you even spoke to, what I love is that, you got the big money guys and the ladies that are in money, but they're not necessarily fulfilled. This is fulfillment for me, is when I can get on the podcast 500 and some odd episodes later and bring amazing people like yourself to this platform, right? Everything comes within time. You know what I mean? We didn't even touch on your book, but it's like that came within time. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you didn't go, oh, let me just chat GPT my book and then out it comes. Like, no, you got to write it from a source, right?
Yeah.
If you're into some sort of creative design, you had to learn, you had to go to school, you had to do the 2 to 3 year course. The money and the success doesn't come with that, because now you have to build yourself up. You got to find those clients to be get that design, get those concepts, do what it is you need to do, or do that course, become that technician to do what it is you want to do, be that programmer. You know what I mean? Be that health and fitness enthusiast. You look at these athletes, they had to start from when they were young, shooting a basketball, throwing a football, right? If you're running a race, if you're figure skating, it all starts. But I think we're so near, some of us are so nearsighted. Well, it's like, okay, I can do that within a year. No, you can't. You can get lucky. There's a thing called luck. There's a thing called chance. I've seen it happen. Pandemic, that's where everybody kind of blew up. Some people blew up. They got lucky. They were in the pandemic. They blew up. But not everybody had that luxury. You know what I mean? So it's like double down on yourself. Sorry. It's like poker. Double down, right? Double down on yourself and just put your best foot forward. Connect that action.
Beautiful, man. I love that.
Yeah,
And you know, everybody deserves to eventually, as you gain more mastery in whatever you're doing, right? Like the old saying of 10,000 hours of mastery, right? Like I've been doing, 12 years in the breath space, that's just one of the spaces I've play in. And, I'm still learning. I'm an eternal student, but there comes a time where I know my craft, right? I walk the talk, I practice breath work, I do all of these things. And eventually that just begins to accelerate. And now I can, monetize my gifts, and I deserve abundance and financial prosperity. You do too, brother. So does everybody, and that's the beautiful thing, is we don't need to deny that. We can welcome that in. But of course it takes time. I mean, I've gone through many periods early on. I had $1 in my bank account, but I kept going because I'm like, all right, I know this is the path. I'm convicted. I'm committed to my spirit. I'm committed to my service, my purpose.
It's the joys to life, especially when you're doing it from a non-monetary gain. Because I said is if you're only in here and doing something for money, eventually you're gonna lose its thunder. But
Yep.
if you come from that passion, boy, oh boy, it doesn't leave you. That's the reason why, like, I will always resonate with Jordan and Kobe. It was a passion. Those guys
Yeah.
had to go through losing moments, heartbreak, to win championships, to
Yep.
live then the off season and do what they need to do. I don't believe Michael Jordan ever had an off season, to be honest, because he was just an
No.
assassin in the mind.
Yeah.
It's just like, listen, the season's done, but I'm still training. The season's done, but I'm still training. You know what I mean? To win more and more and more. And you know what? Now he's living the life. Maybe he had a couple of bad business deals. It is what it happens, whatever. But he's living the life that people want to live. You know what I mean? That's why he can puff on the cigars and drink the whiskey and do all that stuff. It just comes with the territory. You know what I mean? Before we get out of here, I wanted to get into, right, loneliness and lack of direction, right?
Mm.
Speak to the man or the woman that are listening to this podcast that right now are lonely. Maybe they went through a heartbreak. How can they pull themselves back into reality?
Yeah, it's a great question. Just tuning into what wants to come through. And, loneliness is an interesting state to be in. I've been there many times. And I began to distinguish there's a difference between loneliness and aloneness. We're very scared to be alone, right? We're so sufficient. We find sufficiency in connecting with others, right? Because we are a communal species and we desire connection with others. But when we come into our true aloneness, because at the end of the day, if we talk metaphysically, we talk philosophy, we talk esoterically, there's a belief that we are actually all one. And what I was sort of saying before is that what it is you're seeking. If you're lonely, right? If you're feeling this loneliness because it is you're desiring something externally, whether that's connection with someone else, how can you dive deeper, go through that pain to find the connection with yourself, with your spirit, with your truth, with your power? That's where all fulfillment lies. And now I'm not proclaiming this to be an easy journey, but I'm always going to tell someone, how can you embark deeper on your inner path? Whether that's by yourself, I recommend getting a guide, or, someone that is can really facilitate you through this process. But at the end of the day, can you fully rest in your aloneness and be happy? That is the state in which, of course, we're all, transforming and striving towards. And so, if you feel lonely in this moment, if you have just this emptiness within you, go deeper within yourself, because there is a gem within you that's ready to be mined. There's a sun shining beneath the clouds, and it's just your opportunity to part the clouds to find the wholeness, the truth that has always been within you.
Love that you say that, my friend. Well said. You know, before we get out of here, I'm going to make sure I link everything in the show notes. Plug the book, plug your social media, everything that you got coming up for you. And you have a personal invite again. Once this airs, we're going to circle back. I'm going to bring you back on the show because there's some
Let's do it.
stuff at the beginning part that I want to deep dive into, just like that life force energy, and really expound on that a little bit more,
Yeah, yeah.
and even correlate it with some more of the breath work and things like that. So go ahead and plug all your information, my friend.
Yeah, I'll just share, anybody that wants to dive deeper into themselves, there's no better way than the breath, in my opinion. It's the most foundational, primal thing we can do. And I wrote a book. I wrote it very simply. I had many pages, called Master Your Breath, Transform Your Life. I had a very thick book. I had to simplify it down because I wanted to distill the essence of breath and still deliver value, where you can read this book in a day and you can really take home so many insights. And I've also intertwined practices into it, because I'm not about just teaching. I'm about having people go through a direct experience. Because don't take my word for it. What do I know? You don't know me. You don't know who I am. Don't take my word or anything I'm saying. Go experience it for yourself. So within the book, I wove together these breathwork practices that connect to my app. I have an app called Beats and Breath. It's an app where we have, close to 100 breathwork journeys for beginners to advanced practitioners and everybody in between. There's meditations, there's sound healing. And we like to make meditation fun. We put trap and hip hop beats over the top of, deep breathing. And so there's a vibe to it. And you can, it's not just your ambient meditation where you're sitting and, that's cool. I love that. But we want to make it fun and accessible, where anybody from any part of the world can jump in here and just vibe out with the breath and have fun with it and change your state, change your life in the meantime. So, Beats and Breath app, Master Your Breath, Transform Your Life book. And yeah, if you want to know more, all my information is at christopheraugust.co and on Instagram at Christopher_August.
My guy, I appreciate you. You know what I mean? We're definitely going to talk in the back end,
Appreciate you,
get
man.
you to set up a time that we can get you back on the show here and really tap into what I was speaking to, things that really matter to life. Because I think any man, woman, and child, especially in this area of like content and what we're doing, they want to see that humanization that's happening. They want to be human. They want to get to folks that are going to relate, that are going to not bring the production first. You know what I
Yep.
mean? They want it just to be about simply, these are the tools. This is how we're going to get there. And this is how we're going to make it happen. So I appreciate you, my friend.
I appreciate you. Thanks for doing what you do.
Thank you.